This podcast details true crime cases. It contains adult themes and may contain descriptions of violence. It is not intended for children. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you for joining me for this final episode of Once Upon a Crime for 2019. As promised, I've got a special episode to end this year, and it's special for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's a case that I know many of you are interested in and have asked if I'll cover it over the years, but I've kind of held off because a lot has been written and said and documented about this case. And if I was going to cover it, I wanted to find a way to do so from a little bit of a different perspective. So the second reason this is a special episode is because I have a very special guest to help me do just that. With me today to discuss the JonBenet Ramsey case is the one and only Jack Luna. Hey, Jack.
Hey. Hi, Esther.
So Jack is the creator and host of the podcast Dark Topic, and now his new podcast, Crime Machine, and I'm a big fan of both of them. And we'll tell you guys a little bit more about Crime Machine at the end of the episode, because if you haven't heard it yet, I know you're going to be a fan too. So from conversations you and I have had, Jack, I know that you have an interest in this case as well. So is there something particular about this case that interested you when you started thinking about it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so Crime Machine, I do a podcast that focuses in on just a particular moment in the crime itself. And I've always been interested in this case. Who isn't? It's a real whodunit. And so what I was focused on was just the aspect of how this family could wake up, see that the daughter's missing, and call all their friends over for brunch. You know, like everybody's there, kind of stomped around the crime scene. So that's what attracted me to this Crime Machine, is that particular scene.
Yeah, because there are so many parts and pieces of this case, and that really they stick with you. And sometimes thinking about it or reading about it over the years, there's other parts of this case that kind of stand out to me. Like I'll start thinking about, one aspect or another, and I really start debating it in my mind. There's a whole bunch of books that I read about this case, trying to figure out all those parts and pieces. So there's quite a bit to unpack here. But I think we both also like to look at the psychology or the motivations of a crime. At least that's what I get from the way you cover them on your podcast. So I really feel like we're kind of doing a character study of the criminals that we cover in a way.
I totally agree. No, I would agree. But the problem here is that we don't know who did it. So now we're doing a character study on like this whole family. Who, if someone did it inside the house, was it John? Was it Burke? Was it Patsy? Were they all in on it together? And then you have on the outside a whole bunch of people that are all over my whiteboard right now. Yeah. I definitely go from that angle, and I know from listening to your podcast for a long time that you do too. So.
But yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. That the reason this case is different is because it is technically still an unsolved case. So, like you said, if we're going to cover it as doing a character study basically doing a character study of the entire crime, focusing on some particularly interesting aspects of the crime scene, the suspects, the theories of the case. We're not going to so listeners know that we're not going to do an in-depth coverage of the case point by point, because there are many other podcast episodes, there's documentaries, there's books, etc., that listeners have probably already heard. They've probably already seen those. But just to get us started, I'll provide a quick summary, and then we'll begin the analysis. So we'll be starting to take those pieces apart and take a look at them, kind of turn them over and see what we find. Okay, so on December 26, 1996, 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey was discovered missing from her bedroom in Boulder, Colorado. A 2.5-page ransom note was found inside the home by her mother, Patsy. Kidnappers demanded $118,000, the same amount her father, John Ramsey, had received as his annual bonus from his position as president of Access Graphics Corporation. The kidnappers identified themselves as belonging to a, quote, small foreign faction, unquote, and signed the ransom note SBTC. The meaning behind this acronym is still unknown. Although the letter specified that John Ramsey not call the authorities but wait for instructions, Patsy Ramsey called 911 at 5:52 a.m. and reported the kidnapping of her daughter. Boulder police officers and then detectives arrived at the Ramsey home located at 755 15th Street. Patsy Ramsey also called friends and neighbors asking them to come over. Although JonBenet had reportedly been abducted from their home, Only her bedroom was cordoned off. The rest of the house was not treated as a crime scene, and many officers, friends, family, and detectives came in and out of the house, interfering with crucial evidence. The first officers that arrived made a cursory canvass of the home, but did not find an obvious point of forced entry or exit by the kidnappers. John Ramsey and the police waited for the kidnappers' instructions, but none came. At 1 p.m., Detective Linda Arndt asked John Ramsey to make a search of the house from top to bottom to determine if he saw anything out of place. Ramsey, along with a family friend, Fleet White, started his search beginning in the basement. Opening up one of the doors to a separate room in the basement that police had not entered, Ramsey found the body of JonBenet. She had duct tape over her mouth and a nylon cord wrapped around her wrists and neck. John Ramsey moved the body, carrying it upstairs and laying it under the Christmas tree. An autopsy would determine that JonBenet had been strangled and had also suffered a skull fracture. A garrote made from a piece of nylon cord in which a broken paintbrush was tied to was used to strangle the child. So, we're going to start, I think, with this crime scene, because that, I think, is something that you brought up already as well. That's one of the first things I think that leads this case to become so convoluted and to still be technically unsolved is really this botched investigation. So that whole scene of calling people over to the house after the 911 call is made, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but what did you make of that? Because you said that was one of the things that stood out to you is just these people that start arriving at the house soon after they discover JonBenet missing.
Well, it came across to me as something that could seem like a normal reaction from the outside, but we're dealing with a really intelligent guy here in John Ramsey. And in my opinion, if I was him and my daughter's missing, I only want the police there. You know, I only want the investigators there. I want this place to be locked down. I want, he knows about crime scenes and crime scene analysis. This is 1996. There's TV shows out about this stuff at this point. So it just seemed really odd to me that he would invite all these people over to his house. To be honest with you, it seemed like a way to muck up the crime scene, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about the ransom letter in a little bit more detail in a minute. But one of the things that it does say is, in no uncertain terms, is do not call anybody. It gives specific threats about calling people. It basically tells them, you're going to be getting instructions and how you can arrange to get your daughter back, and here's what you need to do, and we're going to be calling you. And then it says, any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter.
Yeah.
And then it says, speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police or FBI, will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If money in any way is marked or tampered with, she dies. So it's very threatening about calling anybody. Maybe that's, I don't know. I was thinking about that too. Is that something that maybe right away you'd say, we need help, and you're going to call, not thinking about that. But I don't know. How do you think you would react to something like that?
To be honest with you, if they said they're going to be calling between 9 and 10 and my little girl's missing, I'm going to wait till between 9 and 10.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait. Me personally, I'm going to wait, and I'm going to see what they have to say. They sound pretty serious,
Yeah.
And I got the money. They asked for $118,000. I just got that as a Christmas bonus. So no problem. We'll get you that and get me my little girl back. And then if I don't get a phone call between 9 and 10, then we're calling the cops.
Right.
But instead, he's inviting over Fleet White for, I don't know, bacon and eggs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. People start coming, not just a couple of people, like a ton of people. So if anybody's watching this house, the first thing they're seeing is like an army of people coming into the house. Yeah. And that's going to be the end of that option, I think, if that was actually true. I guess we should talk about that ransom note, I guess.
Let's talk about it. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. You know what? I'd like to say, like right away, I'm jumping all over the Ramsey family, right? But I mean, like you try to stay objective about it, but it's difficult, especially when you ask me a question like that. That's my true answer. So, obviously I'm a little suspicious about, and so are a lot of people about the Ramseys. I'm not the only one.
Right.
But yeah, this letter, this 2.5-page letter.
To me, immediately, and also to the detectives, because this is what they said right away. This is why they started looking at the family right away. is because this ransom letter seemed like a complete red herring. This in no way is the way a kidnapper would behave. First of all, this letter is way too long. Usually it's something, they brought in FBI and FBI basically said, okay, this is the way a ransom letter looks. Says, we have your, so-and-so, this is how much we want, and await instructions. Or it'll give you the instruction, immediately. And it's, a paragraph, if that. This is, 3 pages long. It's handwritten, and it has a lot of threats against John Ramsey. People probably know this ransom letter, but here's the beginning of it. It says, Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. Who gives a shit who they are? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have your kid and we want money. We respect your business, but not the country it serves. So now they're flattering the guy that they just took his kid.
Yeah. I know. And you know what's crazy too is that, like, they're acting like they're this big, I don't know what they are, this underground group that's coming to, like, terrorize him, and they only ask for $118,000. Yeah. Also, they don't, and he's a millionaire, a multimillionaire, and also an organized group like this would probably write the letter beforehand.
Right.
Like, they wouldn't write it in the house.
Right. Yeah, and that's the other big, huge clue about this letter is that they discover that it was written with a pad that belonged to Patsy Ramsey that was in the kitchen near the phone, and also a pen that was found in the house that was, again, by the phone. So both of the materials used to leave this ransom letter were from materials found in the house. Like you said, that doesn't have it. And plus the fact that if you're going to write it in the house and it's 3 pages long, how long did that take you?
Yeah. Did you see the documentary with Jim Clemente?
Yes.
Is it Jim Clemente? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And they did a test where they all started to write it down. It took them 15 to 20 minutes between the group. It took them plus there was a couple of practice pieces, right? There was one that had been written and then ripped out and thrown out.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, they said that this looked like it was probably the third edition of this letter that finally made it. There was 2 other practices. So I mean, you're talking maybe a half an hour or probably more, because they said, this is copying the letter. It took that long, not trying to think of what to write and then writing it, So it could, it could have took up to 45 minutes. You're going to spend 45 minutes while you have a kid that you're trying to keep under control or whatever. So that right there is the biggest problem in this entire case, I think.
Sure. And I'll say that, say it was an intruder from the outside. I mean, they could write something screwy like that to try to mess with who it was that actually did it as well, right? It wouldn't just be the Ramseys who would think that way,
right?
But I would say definitely a foreign faction, whatever the hell it is. That definitely is not. Those aren't the people who took her. Those aren't the people who did what happened to JonBenet, obviously.
Right.
But overall, again, you would write that letter first. In my opinion, if it was an intruder from the outside, they would have that letter prepared already. You don't want to waste any time in that house, especially when you're kidnapping a little girl and their whole family's home. Right.
And you're coming into the house. It's not like, you caught her where she was outside riding her bike, which she was doing the day before.
Right.
She was riding around on her bike the day before. Wouldn't that have been a perfect time to, grab her, not having to go in the house and somehow not wake anybody up and take her out and all of that? It just kind of defies logic, the whole entire scenario.
I don't get a good feeling about it at all.
Yeah. Okay, so then the police come. They do a search of the house. They didn't see anything like somebody had broken in or anything like that. This is a big house, right? We were talking about this before, and you were kind of describing what it was like or how big this house was.
It's huge. Yeah, it's huge. Way bigger than I thought from what I'd heard in the past, because I did a little tour. Someone on YouTube, I don't know, when the house was being sold again or something, did a tour of it. It's enormous. I think it's 4 stories. JonBenet's bedroom had her own balcony. So, again, if there was an intruder, there would have been multiple entry points. We'll get into that later, I'm sure. But also, if something were to happen in the house far enough away from you, you wouldn't be able to hear what was going on if there was a struggle or whatever. It's a big house.
Yeah, it's a huge house. Yeah, and the parents are actually on the top floor. So apparently it used to be like an attic space, and they completely remodeled the top floor to make it like the whole top floor was like the master suite. So the parents were on a floor all by themselves. The floor below, I believe, was where the kids were. Then the floor below that was like the main floor where the kitchen was. And then there was another floor, which was the basement, which was a huge basement. It wasn't like, you walk in and there's like a big basement, like you would think, but it's like a whole nother floor. There's like, rooms and closets and doors. And so that was a whole other area to, search. And of course it wasn't much light down there because it was a basement. There was some light bulbs in some of the rooms, but that was one of the reasons they said that they didn't find her at first, was because the police didn't go. It was kind of like a maze. Like they had to go through all of these doors, and there was doors behind doors, and I don't know. It just seemed, kind of like a maze.
Yeah, I feel like from the tour that I saw, because I was always kind of hard on the police not being able to find her immediately if she was where they ended up finding her. But the tour I saw, I mean, like you said, it is like a maze, and the spot where she's eventually found, it is definitely the most difficult spot in the house to find. It is tucked away. So.
And that was one of the things that I had seen recently, where somebody was saying you had to know this house to find that spot to put her in. At least that was their theory, where you kind of had to know, because there was so many. That was a difficult spot to find. It wasn't a a clear access to go in or out or whatever. And and then there's still the idea of where did they come in and where did they go out, and there's they had some evidence around that, but it's still debated whether or not a person actually went in and out that basement window, because I don't know if there was any doors open. There's different accounts that there was a door open, there wasn't a door open in the house, so I don't think there's anything definitive. Again, they didn't secure it, so we don't have that information.
Well, we do have the broken window in the back room. I don't know if I'm hopping ahead on you, but broken window in the back room, right? So that would be the only real spot that looked like it had something had gone down there. But there was also a cobweb in the corner.
That's the thing, is trying to figure out where the entry point was, and that was the first idea was, okay, there was a broken window down there in that basement room, and so maybe that was it. But there was also some testimonies taken later, and the housekeeper said that had been broken earlier, and actually John said that he had broken it because he forgot his keys, and sometimes that's how he got in once or twice, was through that window.
Yes. Right. Yes, I saw that too. There's a kind of a cage above it, and you lift it up. One of the the investigators of this case, they brought him out of retirement, Lou Smith.
Oh yeah.
Is that his name? Yes. Lou Smith. He looks like he rode a horse instead of a cop car around. He really believed that somebody
played by
came
Sam
into
Elliott
that window.
somewhere.
Yeah. So I don't know about Lou Smith, but he was a big believer in the intruder deal, and he thought that they probably came in through that window. But I believe it was previously broken window, and also from that documentary with Jim Clemente in it, the more recent one. Through the pictures, the crime scene photos, you see that there's a cobweb in the corner of that window. And when old Lou Smith comes flying through, it definitely gets wiped out by your old buttocks there. If you, pretty much anybody, it's a small spot.
Right.
It's a small spot to come through. So I don't think anybody came in through that window personally.
Right. Yeah. And then think about it. You're trying to get are you trying to get the kid out of the house through the window? Because that's going to be almost impossible. It seemed like you just go out the back.
I don't know.
Very odd.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, if I killed my daughter, excuse me, but I mean, if I did, I don't have a daughter, but just hypothetically, and that's where she was placed, and there's a suitcase sitting there as well. My idea might be to stuff her into the suitcase later and then shove her up to the window and then pick her up and drag her out to the car.
I never thought about that. There is another reason for that suitcase. It wasn't just a stepping stool, you're saying.
Also, if it happened inside the house like that by the family, let's say, they might not be thinking clearly in the first place, right? It looked like if that was the case, some plan was in place to use that suitcase. Not the best plan, but in a pinch, might work.
So there is some other, and we'll circle back around to, it being an inside job, because there's some other things that we're going to go to, some other points on this case. But There's also the intruder theory. We know this. So we got to talk about that as well. So some of the reasons why people made the theory that this was an outside job, not an inside job, was the first theory was kind of like a stranger danger theory. So because JonBenet Ramsey, since, I think she was like 4 or something, had been competing in these child beauty pageants. And, this is something everybody's seen. If they've seen anything about this case, they've seen pictures and videos of JonBenet dressed up in outfits with a head full of hairspray, big hairdos and makeup, and sometimes dressed like a little mini adult, sometimes dressed in really cute little, cowgirl outfit. There were these pageants. I don't know anything about these pageants. I mean, I'm sure they have them here in California, but I don't think they're a big deal. I think they're a bigger deal in the South. And some other places in the U.S. I don't know exactly where, but
no, I've never seen one, so I couldn't tell you. I've never been to one myself. They're creepy, though, in my opinion. I've seen some TV shows with my fiance that we got into for some reason for a little while, but overall pretty creepy. Very short skirts, like you said, dressed as an adult, and for definitely a pedophile's a trigger.
Yeah,
It was one.
So that was one of the things I think right away that became another reason why I think this became such a big deal, on the news, and was because of these pictures of her were just, I think, especially people who weren't raised in areas where that was, something that was going along with the culture, that we were kind of horrified by this. Like, what the heck is going on with the kid? Why are they dressing her like this? What is this? And so that became a talking point, like, oh, well, what do you expect? You dress up this kid with makeup and a pedophile is going to snatch her. I mean, that was the talking point anyway.
Right.
So that was one of the first theories, was that some, pedophile became obsessed with this child beauty queen and wanted to, assault her, rape her, abduct her, all three. That kind of made sense as far as an outside thing. But then that's not what the ransom note said. Had nothing to do with that. It had to do with getting money from John, and they didn't like John. That kind of blew that theory right out of the water if you're going to go with the outside theory, and then the ransom note was real. There's so many moving parts in this. That's why it makes it so complicated to even discuss.
I have a couple. I mean, if you want me to go intruder possible guys from the outside that it could have been, and I'll say again. I mean, I was right with you before. Like, I kind of there's no way that some of these people did it because it doesn't go anywhere along with the ransom note. But again, I mean, I don't know why I keep on using myself. Don't make myself seem like a super creep. My voice is so creepy too. Hey, if I killed my daughter, if I was gonna, kidnap JonBenet Ramsey, if I was gonna write a ransom note, I would fabricate it. And it obviously is fabricated. Whoever did it fabricated it, right? It sounds like out of a movie. Right. So let's even just say one of these characters managed to get into the house and did this thing from intruder from the outside. We can just make that make sense by saying that they lied about who they are, obviously. And would you be ready for a couple of them? Do you want me to name them now, or do you want to wait?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll get to hear Jack's list of intruder theory suspects right after these words from our sponsors. Solid Gold was one of the very first holistic pet food companies in America, started in 1974. Its founder, Sissy McGill, was inspired by a European pet food company and the fact that Great Danes in Europe live longer than their American counterparts. Solid Gold Pet Food is based on the founding belief that high-quality food is the best way to impact our pet's mind, body, and spirit. Hey, I love my dogs, and I want to give them only the best, but sometimes it's hard to know what that is. I learned that Solid Gold's pet foods are different because they cleanse my pet's digestive system with superfoods, balance with living probiotics, and fuel with omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. This is everything my pups need to support their gut health, so they'll get the very best nourishment inside and out. And that's all I need to know. But something else you need to know is that right now, Solid Gold is offering my listeners 30% off their first order by visiting solidgoldpet.com/once. You can get a variety of dog and cat foods and supplements like 100% human-grade bone broth for dogs. My dogs love it. That's solidgoldpet.com/once for 30% off your first order. One thing that can really affect our quality of life is the quality of sleep we get each night. If you have trouble falling asleep, or like me, staying asleep, it can make the days tough to get through. You might have tried some over-the-counter sleep aids, but they can make you feel groggy the next day, and that's no fun either. That's why I'm so happy to tell you about my new sponsor, REMrise. With REMrise, I found an easy, natural way to drift off to sleep, stay asleep without tossing and turning, and get up feeling refreshed the next morning. REMrise is a personalized, yes, I said personalized, sleep solution that uses natural plant-based formulas to help calm the mind, relax the body, and get your circadian rhythm back on track for a better, more restful sleep. And it's drug-free, no groggy side effects. I went to getremrise.com/once and took a free sleep quiz. REMrise determined that in order to get a good night's sleep, I needed to clear my mind and cool my body while sleeping. So it was suggested I use their Rise and Shine formula, and guess what? After just a few days of taking REMrise, I found I wasn't waking up at night and could even sleep in a little later and still wake up feeling refreshed. And REMrise comes with a really cool digital app you can use to track your sleep progress. It even has a guided meditation to help you get in the right mindset for a good night's sleep. Do what I did and check out REMrise today. Go to getremrise.com/once. Take their sleep quiz, and when you sign up, you'll get your first week of REMrise free. You just pay the shipping. So try REMrise for free and start getting a better night's sleep tonight. That's getremrise.com/once. And thanks for supporting the show.
Okay, so you got I'll get Lou Smith's guy out of the way quick. That's the guy who was riding the horse and sliding in through the back window. He liked this Gary Oliva, who was excuse my accent there. He was a pedophile in the area. There was a lot of pedophiles in the area. There was a lot of sex offenders. I believe there was around just over 30. You know, when you can look it up on the internet, you see like all those dots pop up, like,
right,
you know, like a virus in your neighborhood. There was quite a few around, and this guy was one of them. He was at the vigil the candlelight vigil that happened after JonBenet had passed away or been murdered. He had called a friend on the 26th and said that he had done something horrible. And when he eventually did pass away, I'm not sure when that was, there was a poem found in his belongings called Ode to JonBenet. And there was a photo of JonBenet in his belongings as well. So there's one. And that Lou Smith really liked this guy. Like, he thought that this was the guy. It seems that in the pedophile community, and I hesitate to say this, but say men have like The Rock, you know, women have, I don't know, I'm just going to throw in like Jennifer Aniston or something like that. Drag queens share, right? Pedophiles have JonBenet Ramsey. JonBenet Ramsey is like the ultimate, in my opinion, from what I've seen and from, you know, what I've gone through with my other podcasts and things like that. JonBenet comes up a lot as like trophy in the minds of a lot of pedophiles. And that was the case with Gary Oliva.
So he was one that because I guess they looked at him because he was local to the area, correct?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes, and also that he had shown up at the vigil, right? And
right.
And he seemed to have some kind of obsession with her as well. There's more. I mean, there's Santa Claus. So Bill McReynolds, he was hired as the Santa Claus for the Ramsey family, 1995, 1996, and he was smitten by JonBenet Ramsey. She gave him some gold glitter both times that he came. It was like magic glitter, she called it, or something, and he kept that. The thing with Bill McReynolds is that he apparently gave her a note saying that she would receive a gift the day after Christmas. And JonBenet shared with her friend, her name was Barb, I believe, that she was looking forward to this gift she would be getting after Christmas from her special Santa. Bill McReynolds, his daughter was kidnapped on the same day, December 26th of 1974, and along with a friend, and nothing happened to his daughter. The friend was sexually molested, and the daughter witnessed this. But that's odd.
Wow.
Bill's wife wrote a script, like a screenplay or a story or something like that, that featured a child being murdered, raped, and left in a basement. And Bill McReynolds had an odd fascination with JonBenet Rev to his death in 2002. In fact, when he was cremated, he requested that the gold glitter that JonBenet gave him be mixed in with his ashes.
What? Oh my God, you're totally blowing my mind. I didn't know any of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so.
Oh, we're cracking the case today, Esther Ludlow. No.
So, okay, but let me ask you this. Okay, so for the last two people that you talked about, the guy that was the sex offender or whatever he was, and then Bill McReynolds.
Gary and Bill.
Okay, Gary and Bill.
Yeah.
So did they have alibis? Did they check these guys out? Did they, rule them out?
Yeah, well, here, yes. So the DNA evidence ruled them both out, from what I could tell. And this DNA evidence now we know is just touch DNA evidence, right?
Right.
Which is like it could have happened. It could be the DNA of a person in Malaysia who made her underwear,
right? For
all we know. But yes, that's my understanding is that they got let off on their DNA not matching what was found on her clothing.
Okay. So there's another one.
Michael Helgoff, or Helgoff. That sounds horrible. That's a horrible last name if that's correct. Helgoth. Helgoff. Okay. He worked odd jobs in the area. Had a history of violence, sexual abuse. He was 26 years old. Told a friend coming up to that Christmas that he was going to be coming into money just after Christmas. He thinks around $50,000 to $80,000. 2 months after JonBenet, after the 26th of December of 1996, and 2 days after the DA announced that they'd narrowed down their suspects, he shot himself.
Oh, yes, I remember this guy.
You remember this guy? Yeah. And a lot of people, I think, on Reddit seem to be attracted to this particular character as a good, viable suspect. But everybody on Reddit is, I don't know about them. They're a bunch of 22-year-olds with Cheeto dust all over their chin. So I don't follow their lead. And I got one more for you. This is the best. This is the best one in my opinion. I mean, it's not by any means do I believe this at all. But there is a cold case detective retired. His name is John Cameron. He's a big believer that Edward Wayne Edwards is responsible for many crimes, many unsolved crimes from the past. You can check him out at coldcasecameron.com. And I'm not saying I'm a fan of this guy at all. I'm not. I'm just like, check it out just to get your mind blown like mine by how ridiculous this is. He believes that Edward Wayne Edwards was a Zodiac killer, the one who killed Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia, Adam Walsh. Who else he's got here? The Atlanta child murderer, Jimmy Hoffa. He took care of.
Oh my God.
The West Memphis 3 situation. Teresa Hallbach from Making a Murderer, which Edward Wayne Edwards been I swear. I mean, I won't keep on going, but there is more. Oh, and JonBenet Ramsey, by the way, too.
Oh.
So John. And I tried reading his book, and he's a retired detective, cold case guy. He should be, very reputable, and, maybe he is. But he thinks that Edward Wayne Edwards posed as the Santa Claus we spoke about with the gold glitter, Bill McReynolds, and was able to fool JonBenet into letting him into the house using this flashlight trick that he'd used in the past, by like flashing it into her bedroom and signaling. And then JonBenet came and opened the door for him. And then he subsequently did all the things that happened to JonBenet. Yeah. Here's something that's interesting. If this guy is right, and if Edward Wayne Edwards did this, and Edward Wayne Edwards was the Zodiac killer, then SBTC, you know how that's signed on the
yes.
on the ransom note, that stands for Signed by the Cross, which is how the Zodiac signed off, right?
Oh, okay.
Signed by the Cross. Anyways.
How long did it take him to figure that out?
I don't know. This guy's got insiders on insiders. He's unbelievable.
You can take so many things and you can mold them to fit these, these conspiracy theories, these other kind of theories and stuff. And one of the things I wonder, when you're talking about somebody like this guy who obviously has some credibility, he's got some experience, investigating cases and things. It makes me wonder either one or two things is they somehow got so deep in the weeds with this stuff that they're like now stuck there. Like they can't think in normal linear ways anymore, like common sense ways. Like it has to be, layers upon layers of conspiracy and all of these things going on in their head, or that they're trying to sell books. That's the only thing I can think of.
Or even the most terrifying thought is that he's right and nobody believes him.
And we're laughing, but
no, for sure he's selling books.
We're the idiots because we're laughing at this and he totally knows what he's talking about, right? All of those ideas about all of these people, which you can make a case for each one, I would say. What does any of those theories, any of those ideas about who did it have to do with that ransom note? It makes those two things do not match. They don't match. And this is where this case always comes back to me is how do you make that thing fit anything that happened or any of these other theories? And I just don't see it. Whoever wrote that thing totally screwed the pooch on this thing because that was just really dumb. I mean, to not leave any note, to not do anything, and everything else play out the way it did, people would probably just say, hey, it was somebody came in and I don't know who that was. It was some stranger and this is terrible. And all the parents would put their, homes on lockdown for the foreseeable future. But that ransom note changed the entire situation of that entire case. Okay, so one thing I wanted to say about the note, again, it's one of these things that it's kind of hard to get away from. So they did a handwriting analysis of this note, or I'll say letter. It's not even a note. It's too long to be a note. It's a letter. It's a ransom letter. And now I know that handwriting analysis, it's one of those things that can be debated as not really valid to prove anything or disprove anything because it's so subjective. But this one, it's hard to get away from it when you see the writing in the note and Patsy Ramsey's writing side by side is almost identical. It's almost identical.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Okay, so that part, again, you could take it and you could say, I really have to throw that out because handwriting analysis is just really not a science. Okay, I would be okay with that. But if you've ever seen the interviews that they finally did with the parents, because they didn't sit down for a formal interview with the police until 4 months after the murder happened, because they just kept delaying and saying, speak to our lawyers and all of this. Of course, they're going to say that, oh, well, the police were looking at us right away. And so we knew we had to go into a defense mode, which when other people would say, hey, your child just got murdered by an intruder and you're not doing everything you can to help the police. What is that about? So, of course, you could take that either way. But here's the thing. When they finally sat down and interviewed, and I watched this thing at least 3 times in a row where they ask Patsy and then they ask John about the writing. And they show them, a copy of the ransom note with the writing. And they ask both Patsy and John separately, okay, you see this writing. And then they show them letters that they've taken out of stuff that Patsy has written and show them side by side. And they say, do you see anything similar about that letter O or that letter T or that letter G? Okay. And we're looking at it on the screen and it's very similar, right? So you think that they would say something like, well, it does look kind of similar, but it's a no. I don't know. How many ways are there to make a no, right? And that would be okay. They sat there and they say, no, I see nothing similar about those two at all. Okay. That's the one thing. And it's like, okay, bullshit. It's like that. Now you're denying too much. The second thing, which is to me was even more of a huge red flag, was then they show them a picture that is a picture of JonBenet like at a school pageant or something. And underneath is printed out in like a marker. It says something, players, like it's the name of the little group the kids had that they were doing this thing. And it's written out there. And I think it has the date or something. few words on it. And obviously, it's a picture that Patsy took. They know because it was in her photo album with her writing on it, because they've seen her writing over and over. They know. And they show it to her and they say, okay, do you know this picture? First thing, do you know this picture? I don't know. Maybe. I'm not sure. And they're like, well, do you recognize anyone in the picture? She's like, and then she has to hesitate. And then she's like, well, that looks like JonBenet. It looks like JonBenet. It is JonBenet.
Yeah, really.
And then they ask, okay, and do you see the writing below it? Yes. Do you recognize that writing? Nope, not at all. Okay, that's one. Then they show her a scrapbook that she made that has pictures of the kids and her writing underneath all the pictures. Like there's 2 pages of it. And they're showing her, and same thing. They ask her, do you recognize this, these pictures? Oh, yeah. I think maybe they asked if, where did it come from or something. I don't know if she answered that directly. But then they ask again about the writing. And she says she can't be sure if that's her writing or not. Come on.
Yeah, it sounds like they are, well, obviously, it sounds like they've been coached. I feel like John's the quarterback and they're running plays. And the goal, when in doubt, is to deny.
Right.
Again, if it was my family and my daughter had been kidnapped, that's what I would tell my family. Joking. No, but I mean, you would that's how you would run it. So it really does feel like John is the puppet master here. Even with the letter, Patsy was a performer, as was JonBenet. She kind of forced her into the thing. I'm sure she enjoyed it to some degree, but I believe JonBenet was quoted as saying by a family friend, they were looking at her trophies, and she's like, "Oh, those aren't so much my trophies as they are my mom's," or something like that, right?
Right.
Patsy's she's a performer, and that letter, that ransom note reeks of like somebody who's being over dramatic. Also, maybe someone who's being coached by, in my opinion, John, because there's a lot of references. It feels like a movie, Like, remember that? Jim Clemente was talking about that on that one.
Yeah, apparently there was some of the phrasing in there that came from a couple of different, like action movies
posters
of the day or something. Yeah. So,
but he had the posters. He had the actual posters for those action movies in his house, like hanging up in his house.
So his very favorite movies just happened to be the lines from them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's not staged.
Right, it was like
all.
Dirty Harry. No, Dirty Harry was on the wall, and it was like, "P.S. You feeling lucky, punk?" It was like it was that obvious for real. There was a few. Oh. Anyways, I'm just trying to add to what you're saying there, that it feels like they're denying when they shouldn't. They don't even necessarily need to deny. Exactly. But it feels the reason is, in my opinion, is that John is in their head. And they feel a little uncomfortable there. And it's like, okay, just revert to deny.
Right, exactly. And it's just too much denial, though. I mean, when you could make a simple statement and say, yeah, that is my writing, of course, obviously, it's my photo album, but it's not the same writing. Or maybe, I don't know why it looks so simple. I mean, you could do something, a variation of that. Not everything is what somebody planted these photos in your scrapbook and planted your writing in your scrapbook. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I think I told you this, I go back and forth with the family was involved theory, just because of, certain aspects of it, I think are just, gosh, would a parent really do that? Would a family member or a loved one really do that? And I know that we can go and we can say, well, yeah, we know people do horrible things all the time to their families or loved ones, but it's so sometimes my brain will go that way. And it's like, I don't know that I can totally buy into it. And then something like this that I see, and I'm like, okay, now you're just giving me more fuel to doubt you, because it's being ridiculous now, saying that this isn't your writing when you know damn well it's your writing and everybody knows it's your writing.
I think it's important to talk about this could go on forever, but a lot of the documentaries that I watched, the one with Jim, do you know what that one was called?
It was called
JonBenet Ramsey.
The case for JonBenet Ramsey, I believe that was called. Yeah.
And that's one of the more recent documentaries done, and in my opinion, the best one that was done. If your listeners want to check that out,
it's called The Case of JonBenet Ramsey.
Yes, and there's 2 parts. You can get it on YouTube. But then there's a lot of people who only watch the Dr. Phil. I don't want to trash Dr. Phil. He's a good friend of mine, but I mean, he just completely sided. Like he's like, there's no way it could be Burke. I've talked to this family. It's not Burke. I'm telling you. Yeah. And I talked to John. And besides that, the police have never even considered them as suspects. So why am I going to suspect them? Well, the court of public opinion is thinking that there might be suspects there, Phil. So maybe we could talk about it a little bit, though.
Yeah.
And then he's like, Burke's smiling, it's a nervous reaction. I don't discount that as nothing. I'm like, I don't. That's weird, man.
Because here's the thing that we kind of are reduced to. If you're thinking that the ransom note, which most people are, thinking that the ransom note is planted, then you have to say that it had to be somebody in that house. And as far as we know, to this day, there was only 4 people in that house, and all of them had the last name Ramsey. Okay, you got John, you got Patsy, you got JonBenet, and you got Burke, right? So that's why people go to that conclusion, like, well, it's got to be somebody. And if it wasn't the parents, who else is left? Now, it's difficult to say a 9-year-old committed a murder, but I don't think that's what people are saying. From what we saw on that case it seemed like what they were saying is that it was probably something that happened and it was an accident that then got covered up, which would make more sense. But
definitely. I mean, you don't want to say a 9-year-old committed a murder, but you could for sure say a 9-year-old committed an accidental murder.
Right.
It's
exactly. Okay, so here was a couple of the theories, and this is Boulder Police Department had this theory, and I think they were going with what they knew at the time, but I think that they came up with a theory that really didn't cover everything. So their theory, and again, this was initially the Boulder Police Department's theory, was that Patsy was responsible. So the theory was that she accidentally killed JonBenet after a bedwetting incident. I think that was pretty much what the public was thinking early on. So I think that people thought, it's possible that could have been an accident, that she did get angry and something happened and JonBenet, got seriously injured in whatever happened. But then the rest of the scene, again, they staged it to look like a kidnapping. That part I could get. The only part that doesn't fit that for me, and you can maybe say what you think or how this could be possible, is the garrote around the neck. And I'm like,
I think I got it.
I can see anything else. Like, she's mortally wounded and she died from the skull fracture. But the fact that they find out from the autopsy that she was not dead when she was strangled, and the strangulation is what killed her. And the strangulation was caused by the garrote that was tied to a cord around her neck. And I'm like, I cannot envision any parent doing that to their child. Not that way.
Right. No. Well, I mean, I'll have to lead in again with if I was doing these kind of things to my child. The reason why I'm doing that is because this family sues people. I know that we're not humongous, but you don't want to start saying that these people did these things.
No.
And so, the way that I can see it, if I was in the situation, okay, here's my thing. First of all, Patsy stayed up. She was up all night. John claims that the next day that they woke up and they found this note, but she's wearing her same outfit and same makeup, although touched up makeup from the previous night when they went out with friends, right?
Yep.
So what's she doing up all night?
Yeah, and that is not a typical behavior of an ex-beauty queen, to wear your same makeup and clothes in 2 days in a row. Because she told the investigators later that, oh yeah, I got up and I just put on, the clothes I was wearing the night before. No, I'm sorry, no.
Right.
I don't buy it.
No,
and you did your makeup and everything before going downstairs? No, I don't buy that.
Yeah. I mean, unless you had a cocaine habit that I'm not aware of, but I mean, that's the only thing that causes me to wear my clothes for 3 or 4 days straight. Maybe she had the same problem as myself. I was joking. Okay. So when it comes to the garrote wrapped around the neck, hypothetically, the only reason I can see the family being able to do this to their daughter is if Burke did it. Is if Burke was sexually abusing his younger sister, and they've gone into some strange little kid sex game that got super out of friggin' control, which I don't believe, by the way. I'm just saying. And Patsy walked in on it, and she was gone, and they moved forward with it and did what they had to do to be able to cover it up. Other than that, I mean, if I'm the father and I'm molesting my young daughter, who there was some indication on her vaginal area that there had been some chronic type of abuse that had gone on, So with the garrote they had the broken paintbrush, right?
Right.
Correct, and that was Patsy's paintbrush.
Right.
They found a sliver of that in her vagina.
Right.
So they believe that was inserted, but that's what caused the damage down there. If I'm John, or if I'm John and I'm molesting my daughter, hypothetically, then I'm going to try to cover up that previous abuse that I've been doling out with adding some additional damage with this stick. So it looks like the only damage. And if I had been doing that, then I might not have too much of an issue of going forward and doing that. So let's just say hypothetically that Burke's sitting there eating his pineapples and milk, like they found on the table, right? And there's we didn't get into that, but there's the big spoon that obviously a kid would have brought out, like a mother wouldn't have brought out a regular size spoon. So I think Burke got himself a snack, pineapples and milk, which is acidity and alkalinity. I mean, it's a really questionable snack. It's tough on the stomach, but I haven't tried it. I don't suggest you do, but that's what he's eating. And let's say that JonBenet comes by and grabs a piece of this pineapple, and they do find this pineapple partially digested in her, like it's not even into her stomach, right?
Right. It's not into her stomach yet. Yeah.
And both parents say that she didn't have a snack before bed, that she just went straight to bed, that she was sleeping when they got home, but obviously she had eaten something. So let's say this is a theory from the documentary that we just spoke about. And then Burke gets pissed off and smashes her over the back of the head with this flashlight that is found on the table. There's no blood spatter on the flashlight because it just caves the head in. It doesn't break the skin or anything because the skin's so elastic, and it causes her brain damage to go brain dead, pretty much. She's still alive, but she's brain dead.
Right.
Father comes down, the mother comes down. Oh my God, mom's not going to change out of her dress because they're spending the whole night figuring out what to do about this to protect their son. Maybe dad, this is my hypothesis, my horrible hypothesis, that the dad goes through with doing all the things that are necessary to make it look like someone had come into the house and raped and murdered his daughter. And the reason why he's comfortable with doing that, the only reason I can think of that if this is the way it went, is because he was already molesting his daughter, and maybe in horrible ways.
And
that's the only way I can see it.
I didn't think about that as far as, that as the cover up, because that was the other part of it that was difficult for me to piece together to this whole scenario, was the fact that it looked like something had been inserted into her, which was in, the sexual nature. And I thought, but why would you do that? But that, I never thought of it that way. It would kind of put a button on that theory. Again, the stranger thing, there's problems with the family thing. There's problems with, although, and then of course, we talked about the DNA, that they found all this stranger DNA, but of course we know that was touch DNA and it could have been from anything. So you can't really rule that in or out at all. There other thing that I have to speak to is, people still say the window, somebody came in through the window, which of course we talked about that. There was also an unidentified boot print in the basement that belonged to what kind of boot did they say it was?
I got it.
Tech
It was
something.
you know what? And the guy that I mentioned earlier, Michael Helgoff, he had a boot. He had a boot that matched that print.
I guess the other thing that I heard is they said, in that area, that was a really common shoe, and it was a very common shoe size.
Yes.
So they couldn't definitively point to any one person as having that boot. It could have been somebody who came to work in the basement. It could have been John Ramsey himself. I don't know if it was the same size. Maybe it wasn't. But again, the people that will point to the intruder theory will point to that boot print.
It was called High Tech. It was a High Tech logo on it.
Okay.
And the reason I know that is because, like I said, Michael Helgoff had the same boot.
The one thing that we'll talk about real quick, because to me, this is something that you could, and again, this is a Lou Smith thing, I'm pretty sure, was the whole idea about the stun gun marks that he said were on her body. His theory was because they found these two marks on, I believe it was on her, was it on her back or her?
I think it was on her back, but I'm not entirely certain.
They found two red marks that were a certain length apart. And so he put together the fact that he said that this fit like a certain type of stun gun, so that somebody had probably stunned her. And this is the part where I'm like, okay, throw this one out because I don't get this at all, is that he said that he used that to subdue her. Well, from what I've seen on YouTube videos, when you get hit with a stun gun, you like freaking scream your head off, right?
It doesn't knock you out. It's not like getting hit over the club or something.
No.
Yeah.
And if, she got hit by a stun gun, she would have screamed, and you think that somebody would have heard that. And it would have been like one little quick scream. I think it would have been a scream, you know. I mean, that was out there for a long time, the stun gun marks. But as soon as I heard, I'm thinking, wait a minute. I don't think that subdues you. I mean, it makes you not be able to move, but it's also going to make you fight and scream and, you know, thrash around. So I don't think you want that with a 6-year-old. And I don't think you need a stun gun on a 6-year-old. I think you can throw, you know, a hand around her mouth and pick her up. I mean, she weighs what, 50 pounds, you know? I mean.
Oh yeah.
So
it'd be no problem.
Yeah.
It'd be no problem. And I'll say with that too, is that, same documentary that I keep mentioning, they think that it's possible. There was a toy room, a little playroom there, and they had a whole bunch of trains, and it looked like the train tracks when they click together, or there's like metal rods, kind of small metal rods poking out of them. It's possible she was laid down on top of one of those, and that caused imprints into her back after she'd been knocked out. They look like they might have matched those. So yeah, I don't believe the stun gun theory or whatever myself either, because of the flailing around like you mentioned too.
That did make a whole lot of sense. So one of the things that I found really, really interesting, and I don't think I literally looked at this till much later, was when I really pulled up the transcripts of the 911 call. That Patsy made this 911 call right after finding the ransom note, as we said. And there was a couple of things. Well, first of all, people are going to point to, and we'll talk about what was heard supposedly inadvertently at the end of the 911 call. But really the 911 call itself has a lot to, I guess, kind of question and again, it's one of those things, you hear 911 calls in all kinds of cases and people say they didn't sound very concerned, so they must have been the killer, or they sounded too concerned, so they must have been faking it. You know, I mean, you don't know. You can't tell by somebody's demeanor on a call. You don't know how you would react, really, if you had to make a 911 call to something like this. So I don't think you can really analyze this, but I think you can, at least for me, most of my listeners know, is that I did counseling for a living. And one of the things that you do is you listen to people and you listen to the way they talk. You listen to the words they use, and it tells you something about their mindset, about how connected they are to what they're telling you. And so when I saw this, and here's the first thing about this 911 call, is that it's super short. It's really, really short. And usually if somebody, I think, you know, you're on a 911 call and your child is missing, you're going to stay on that call until help arrives. I mean, most of the 911 calls I hear where there's something like this going on, or there's even, somebody's gotten hurt, they stay on the call and because they're waiting for the police, because you'll be saying things like, where are they? Where are they? I don't hear the sirens. Where are they? You know, are they almost here? And the 911 operator has to tell them over and over again, yes, they're on their way, they're on their way, they're on their way. And this one is super short before she hangs up. So that was the first thing that really struck my attention. It's also the very first things that go on when she calls 911. The first thing she does is give the address, just straight out give the address, which makes sense because you're trying to get help there. So you're going to give the address. And then the 911 operator asks, what is going on there, ma'am? And she says, we have a kidnapping. Hurry, please.
Yes.
Now, that right there, we have a kidnapping. I mean, again, who knows what words you would use, but this just seems very disconnected.
Rehearsed. Well, yeah, it seems disconnected. It also feels like a performance. Once again, with Patsy, she's a performer. It completely feels like a performance to me.
So she says, we have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Okay. I just think that you're the mother, little child is missing. Your child is missing. You would say, my daughter's missing. My daughter's been kidnapped. My baby's gone, something like that. Instead of we have a kidnapping. It just seems very disconnected. And then she asked her, explain what's going on. She starts to say the same thing again. We have and then she stops. And she says, there's a note left and our daughter is gone. I think you said it well, like you're setting the scene in a way, not saying what you need to say to get help there immediately. Right. She's saying kidnapping, there's a note. To this point, she has not said her daughter's name. She has not described her. She has not said her age. She's given no information about who's gone except for she finally says, our daughter's gone. She's at the beginning, she doesn't even say our daughter. She says, we have a kidnapping. Who's kidnapped? It could be an adult? We don't know.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
the way that I took it, Esther, is like the emotion and the wildness in her voice doesn't match what she's saying. If you say everything that she said in a deadpan tone, it still makes sense.
Right.
But when you're freaking out and you're in that situation, you say all kinds of things, and it feels very prepared. It feels like she's hitting points. It feels like she's been prepped. Once again, like I'll say again, it feels like she's been prepped by somebody. Yeah. And she's trying to hit the certain points. And when she's done the performance, guess what? She's done.
She hangs up. Yeah, she hangs up. Yeah. Because then she says, a note was left and your daughter is gone. She says, yes. Again, one word answer. I think you'd be like running out of the mouth to try to give all this information as quickly as possible. Then they ask, how old is your daughter? Because, she could be 25. They don't have any idea, right? She says she is 6 years old. Again, still has not said her name. I don't think she ever says her name. Right. She says she is 6 years old. Doesn't. She is blonde, 6 years old. She is blonde. That's the most pertinent information. Not, she was in her room. We haven't seen her. And then she goes into it. How long ago was this? She says, I don't know. Just found a note, and my daughter is missing. Again, repeating what she already said. Does it say who took her? What? Does it say who took her? She said, no, I don't know. It's there. There's a ransom note here. She keeps talking about the note, right? Yeah. Now, I can see maybe being fixated. I think you'd be more fixated on where is my daughter? And then she says, it says SBTC victory, please. She talks about what it says at the end of the note, which later on she says that she did not read the entire note. She barely saw the beginning and then called 911. But then she's telling them what it says at the end. So that didn't arrive either. Yeah. Now, this is the one I think that first stood out to me the most. She said, okay, what's your name? Are you? And then she says, Patsy Ramsey. I am the mother. It's, again, so disconnected. I am the mother. Not.
Well, it sounds like, it almost sounds like she's the one doing the ransom note now. That's like something you would say if you had somebody. It's like, I am the mother, or I am the man who took the child. It sounds like she's doing a ransom call herself. Yeah. Because it's a performance. Like, again, it's a performance, right? It doesn't ring true.
No, it doesn't ring true. I am the mother. I don't think anybody would say it that way. I'm her mother. Again, disconnected. Oh, not I'm her mother, my baby, nothing like that. So then she says she's sending an officer, and she just keeps saying, please, 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 please send somebody, please send somebody. She says that over and over. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. We just got up and she's not here. Oh, God, please send somebody. Please send somebody. She's reassuring her, I am honey, I am honey. She says, please. And then she takes a deep breath and then you don't hear anything. And she says, hurry, hurry, hurry. And then the 911 operator, Lacey hangs up, but doesn't hang up, right? Right. Because she's just saying, Patsy, trying to get her on the phone, but she's not on the phone. But then again, we know that she didn't hang up the phone. She thought she hung up the phone. Apparently, this is what was found, later on from two things. One was there was an enhanced audio that was later done of the 911 call. And there was also, not until that Jim Clemente special, from what I gathered, they had not talked to the 911 operator. She had never been interviewed. At least that's what she said. No. And she said that, what was the first thing that she said that she heard?
I think that she was recalling the tone of what she felt that she was hearing, because it's been so long. She hadn't heard it. She hadn't heard it to that point either. Mm-hmm. But what I definitely took off of her was that she was spooked by the fact that this woman had been so out of her mind, and goes to hang up the phone, supposedly because she's still out of her mind. And then she could hear her talking calmly. And whatever it is, it was more the tone switch. Yeah. Because you think if she was talking in that frantic manner, what you would hear if she failed to hang up the phone was her yelling at her husband, or yelling at her kid, yelling at Burke, or yelling at everybody, like that we got to do something, or whatever it is. Instead, it's like she's kind of just whispering to herself, like thankful that it's over. I think, but no, to answer your question, I don't know.
Yeah. And I remember reading something about, it was something like, Jesus help me, or something like that. Oh, yeah. And then I read in a couple of different accounts, but I didn't hear it myself, so I can't say for sure. A little ways away from the phone, so it's not as audible, but saying something like, okay, we called the police, now what? And
oh yeah, what Jim Clemente on that episode on that documentary, what they think that they hear. And I gotta say, the only reason why I heard what they said that they heard is because they put the
words over it.
They feed it. Yeah, it's kind of like watching like one of those ghost shows, and they say it's like I'm in the house. It's like it said it said I'm in the house, and then it shows it along the bottom. You're like, oh yeah, totally. Oh my god, freaking ghosts are real. But the situation here was you can hear Burke, what sounds maybe like a kid,
right?
Or sorry, you hear the husband, possibly John, say, "We're not talking to you."
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear Burke say, what did happen or something.
What did you find?
What did happen? What did you find? Sorry.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even if we get the words wrong, like let's say that, like you said, it's not completely crystal clear. So I think they are kind of trying to determine what they think they hear to the best of their ability, right? So we can say, okay, that might be what they said. It might not be what they said. But here's the thing. I think of either way, they said over and over and up until, the end, even now, that Burke was not awake at all when they called 911. Right. Actually, they had to wake him up after the police came and then somebody took him to the neighbor's house. He was not awake. He didn't hear anything. He didn't see anything. He doesn't know anything. He can't tell you anything. And because he was asleep. But they hear a child's voice on the end of that 911 call. Now, I don't think you can't mistake Patsy's voice for a child's voice because you have her voice also on that call. So you know the difference. And it's not going to be John. John's not going to sound like a child. He's a full-grown man. So they knew that was a child's voice. And the only child in that house, supposedly, that was, there at the time was Burke. So again, it's one of those things that they're denying this. Why? And that's where you get this idea that it's a cover-up. There's something happening here. We don't know exactly what, but something's being covered up because why are they lying about Burke being awake?
Yes, and the tone, if you want to believe that's the family there that you hear in those 6 to 8 seconds, whatever it is, when she thinks she's hung up the phone, the tone certainly, and I believe that you're hearing that all three of their voices there. The tone is like, what do we do next? And it's like the kid says something and the father's like, shut up, man. We're not talking to you. You've caused enough problem here. And the wife's like, kind of like, oh, Jesus, I did it, okay, and whatnot. And then John's trying to figure out what to do next. In my opinion, that's how it sounds. John actually goes out and he calls his pilot and makes plans to
leave
head
town
back home. They're from, right? Yeah, to leave town. They did have Christmas plans to go see his older children. Right. But you think it would be one of the last things he's talking about. And what it does feel like, he's trying to get Burke out of the house. And he does, in fact, achieve that with getting one of his friends to take Burke out of the house at some point. He's in control. John's in control of the crime scene.
Yeah, totally. Well, he's the one that found the body. Obviously, he's in the crime scene. And the fact that he also messed up because he didn't call people right, like, okay, you find your daughter down there. I can kind of understand that there's a reflex to want to get her to help. But I also think people just have this idea, because movies, television, whatever, is that you don't move somebody, when they're wounded. You don't move them because you don't know. What if she has a broken neck, or, you don't know. And she's got a cord around her neck. So what if she has a broken neck? You don't want to move her, right? So, but he does. He picks her up and takes her all the way upstairs and places her on the floor, which, like you said, another way to mess up the crime scene. And any evidence that might be there. That. Right.
And there was also a moment, before they decided to start searching the house, where John was what they call it out of pocket for like an hour and a half. They didn't know where he was. Mm-hmm. So the detective that was there lost complete control of the scene. And then when they said that they're going to search the house top to bottom, they said top to bottom. Mm-hmm. John goes right downstairs, and the one of the detectives is alongside with him, and they claim that John says, "Oh my God, here she is," something along those lines, before he even turns on the light to that room.
He goes straight to the basement. Now,
like a bloodhound.
You would think he would start at her room, or the floor where she was taken from, or maybe go outside and look at all the doors, from the outside. Is there anything that I can see somebody walking around outside, or how do they get in? I don't think your first instinct would be to go straight to the basement. It just seems odd.
And the hour and a half of these out of pocket. I mean, if I'm the dad, I've searched the whole house already, even before the cops get there. I mean, the entire house.
Right.
I'm looking everywhere. You know, is someone playing a joke on me?
Mm-hmm.
You know, is my wife playing a joke on me even? You know, it kind of looks like her handwriting.
Yeah.
So it's so
here's kind of the wrap up of the theories and the clues because we're not saying that we advocate for any of these because we don't know. I mean, it's still an unsolved, in my mind, it's still an unsolved case. I would love to know. Everybody always asks when they ask questions of me, they'll say, what's the one case that you would like to see solved? This is the one I'd like to see solved. I would like to know definitively what happened to this poor little girl, you know, and somebody to be held accountable, whether they're alive or dead. You know, to just be, we know that this was the perpetrator. Yeah, it's crazy. But there's so many things that point to one way and then another. There's definitely more, I believe, to an inside job than an intruder. But there are some things that we pointed out as far as an intruder theory that we can't say for sure that we know either way that it wasn't. So if we're talking about Patsy's involvement, we're going to talk about the 911 call, which we talked about, that it just seems a little scripted. It just seems a little off. Of course, it's subjective. The ransom note for sure, because it's the materials were from her house. Or it's more than likely her handwriting. They've done a linguistic analysis on it. You know, FBI's done it and said seems to be written from a female, not a male. I mean, lots of things, like you said, that then the amount of money in it, the words that are used that go directly to favorite movies of John Ramsey's, all of this. Okay. Fingerprints on the pineapple bowl. She said she didn't feed her any pineapple. She didn't feed her anything that night. And Patsy Ramsey's fingerprints are on that pineapple bowl. Now we can say, okay, she put the bowls away, but hers were the only fingerprints on the pineapple bowl. Was JonBenet wearing gloves when she got the pineapple? I mean, how do we say that's not? And and again, she could have just said, yes, I gave her pineapple when we got home, and then she went to bed. That would have just covered that, But she's adamant.
I think Burke. Sorry.
Good.
Yeah, she's adamant about that. She is, and I think Burke's fingerprints are on it too. So.
His fingerprints were on the glass next to it. Yeah, his fingerprints were on the glass that she said that she didn't give him either. He said that she didn't. She knew nothing about that full snack.
Right. Which is wild. And I know we're going after Patsy right now a little bit, but Burke as well. You know how you were talking about there you're talking about it now as well, where Patsy will deny in situations where she doesn't particularly need to deny. Burke did the same thing. When Burke was being interviewed, they show him a picture of the pineapples and milk, and there's the tea sitting there. I think it was iced tea, right? Like a glass of green tea.
Yeah, it was like a tea bag inside of a glass. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So did you see this part when they're showing him the photo? And
no,
Burke
I didn't.
Won't... Okay, well, he's like, I see tea. And they're like, okay, you see anything else? And he's like, he won't say pineapple. He won't say that he sees pineapple, even though it's right there, and he was eating pineapple, which leads people to believe, something bad happened around the pineapple. And, in my opinion, Dad's told him not to talk about the friggin' pineapple. So he kind of shuts down when it comes to something that could relate directly to how things actually went down. Yeah, I think your answers, a lot of the answers come from every time they deny when it seems unnecessary. That is where you really need to look.
Yes, exactly. When you don't need to deny it and you're still denying it, then that tells you something else. Because he could have said, it looks like pineapple. And I've heard that it was pineapple. So I guess it's pineapple, but I don't know anything about it. That would be the end of that, right? Like,
of course. He was eating pineapple.
Yeah.
It's your bowl of pineapple.
Like we said, she's wearing the same clothes, so it seems like she was up all night. She said that no one woke up that night. She, again, adamantly denying that the kids were up at all, that she hadn't fed JonBenet any food, which we know she had eaten something. The interviews afterwards are really weird if you watch those of Patsy. She seems either drugged or defiant on all of these interviews. Very defiant, like she just will not give an inch. She's so ticked off to have to answer any questions. You can say, okay, because she feels like they're looking at her as a suspect. I guess you could get that attitude. But I think when you want to give them everything you can to show them, look, dude, there's no way I did this. I want to help you find who did this. This was my baby, but this isn't happening. She's completely in 100% defense mode the whole time.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing else there. The voice on the 911 call we talked about, and that there was no evidence of forced entry according to police that they saw. John's involvement, we can talk about, again, the voice at the end of the 911 call. He's the one that finds and moves the body. Yeah, like you said, he makes plans to fly out to Atlanta, like within an hour or so of the body being, of his daughter being found murdered. And the police heard that and they're like, dude, you can't leave town. We're conducting an investigation here. He's like, well, I have a business meeting. It's like, he was supposed to go to Michigan to see his family. He wasn't planning to go to Atlanta. Now they're going to Atlanta all of a sudden, but he's got a private jet. You can go wherever he wants. Private jet. How much does that cost? That's what I was saying.
Oh, he had a lot of money. He had more than $118,000. I'd say that $118,000.
I was
nothing to this guy. He says it's a bonus.
Yeah, how much scratch you have to have a private friggin' jet? Oh my God, and a pilot.
You got a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
You got to have a lot. Mm-hmm.
Also, that he was uncooperated with the investigation. Like I said, it took 4 months till they would consent to sitting down for formal interviews, and it really had to be forced upon them.
Yeah, Burke. I was going to say, as you're going through there, you reminded me of something. I don't know how to say this without sounding like I'm going to make you laugh or something. But Burke took that grapefruit-sized dump in JonBenet's bed. Remember that?
No.
Remember that? I believe it was one of the maids or something. But they came across that Burke had taken a dump in JonBenet's room, and they said it was the size of a grapefruit, which would indicate that there's some kind of issue between Burke and JonBenet. That Burke had a problem with her.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to talk about that jealousy theory, because some people, point to this to say, well, maybe he was jealous and maybe something happened, because they said, okay, he was the firstborn of Patsy and John anyway, of Patsy, and JonBenet is the younger, of course, the baby of the family. Plus, she's getting a ton of time and attention from Patsy because of all of these beauty pageant things. Of course, because Patsy, she was in beauty pageants when she was a teenager and, won Miss West Virginia or something, and, wanted her daughter to follow in those footsteps. So she spent a lot of time, they traveled, they went to all these things, they went shopping for all her outfits, they, dance classes. And they said, well, Burke maybe was resentful of that because he wasn't getting as much attention from his mother. So there was that. And there was also another story about him hitting her with a golf club at another time, where I think that the neighbor or the housekeeper, somebody said it seemed like maybe not an accident. Like he got angry and hit her with this golf club. And I think didn't she end up having taken her for like some kind of
plastic surgery
for the scar?
She did. Yeah. Yes, he hit her in the face and it caused a scar on her face. So there's a kind of a connection there that we can make based on what somebody said, and that's one of the landscapers. He said that Burke was always kind of like introverted, not that friendly, but JonBenet was always super friendly, right? And very personable. Everybody said this about JonBenet. I mean, from local pedophiles to just Santa Claus who got hired to come. Like they loved her like men. It seems from everything I'm gathering, she would be the type of little girl who would really charm a woman or an older man because she was maybe more mature and she was emotionally secure by the sounds of things. Burke not so much. So that could indicate that maybe JonBenet was better at getting attention, and Burke would have reason to express himself by, I don't know, taking a grapefruit-sized dump in her room. I can't get over that. A grapefruit? He's 9. But that's the information that we have here.
Yeah. Of course, there's always going to be sibling rivalry, sibling jealousy. There's one last thing. So about Burke is that they did interview him. So what happened was, and this, I didn't put all these pieces together until recently when I went back and read all these things and looked up some stuff when they actually interviewed Burke and why they interviewed Burke before they even interviewed the parents. It was because here's this little girl that gets murdered in her home. And of course, they've got to look at the parents for this because it's in her home. The Department of Social Services has to do an interview with the remaining, living child to make sure that he's safe. They didn't take him out of their custody or anything like that, but they wanted to make sure that there wasn't something going on and now this kid was going to be in danger. So they had the DSS do an interview with him. And it's a very interesting interview. You can listen to audio. I think some of it was on, I don't think it was Dr. Phil. I think it might have been the other one, the case of, I don't know if it was video or just audio. I can't remember, but I do.
There's some video.
There's some video. Yeah.
There's
okay.
some video.
I don't think that came out till later. I would tell people to go watch it because it's very interesting. He comes across as a normal kid in most ways, but he does seem very disconnected from his family. Like he doesn't seem, and I don't know if this is just how he is, he's just a quirky kid, or if there's something, some people have alluded to, well, maybe he was on the spectrum or something. I can't, say that because I don't think he was ever diagnosed with anything like that. So,
no,
but I think they're just going.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think they're just going by his demeanor, like people just kind of speculating about that. But there's times when they're asking, and again, it also could be you're a 9-year-old kid. This is all very strange and, even maybe upsetting. So maybe you kind of shut down and you don't want to talk about it. But he seems to be okay talking about certain things, even the things that would really bother you the most, he's okay talking about. Like when they ask about, do you know what happened to your sister? I think he says yes, or he thinks so, or something like that. And then they say, well, what do you think happened? And I think he says something like, probably somebody came and hit her or stabbed her or something. But he does a motion with his hand over his head, that kind of like swinging down over. He makes a motion with his arm and his hand, like he has something in his hand and he swings it down. And they said that was really weird because they're thinking, is he mimicking the skull fracture? How that happened? Like, and how would he know this? Because nobody had said anything about the skull fracture. And they said, well, he might have heard, maybe the parents were talking. Your parents going to talk about that in front of you? I'm like, that's kind of bad if you do.
No.
But
they were trying to protect him, it seemed.
But other things, they would ask him simple things, like you said, and he would either not talk about it, or they started asking him about, I think about touching or inappropriate touching or something like that. And he got very uncomfortable about that.
Yeah.
And so they said, and they kind of equated it like some kids, when you ask them about that, if they don't know what you're talking about, like they'll kind of try to make up something because they don't know what you mean. But he said he started putting things in front of his face, like he was hiding. So it's really interesting to watch. But the part that they thought was most kind of strange was when he did that, mimicking the hitting somebody like overhand with something in your hand.
Yeah.
And I think
it freaked me out a bit when I saw him do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it did look like he was repeating I don't know. I've worked, like, it's funny you mentioned the spectrum. Like, I've worked with a lot of kids on with Asperger's, autism. My son's on the spectrum, and with him, I was picking up stuff that I recognized. I mean, we don't need to go there yet. Like you said, he hasn't been diagnosed. But what I recognize with my son or other kids that I've worked with who behave like, let's say, Burke does, when it's safe, he speeds up, and when it's dangerous, he slows down. It's that simple, in my opinion. And that's what it felt like to me. It's like when they were getting closer to territory that his dad, in my opinion, might have warned him about, he slows right down. He's like, okay, I got to think. I can't just blurt everything out because this is the type of kid who just blurts everything out. You can tell with him. Oh. And then he slows down, right? Which is unnatural. So I found that very interesting. But the striking motion you're speaking about, that came out like a blurt, like he blurted it out.
He didn't think first.
Which was freaky. Yeah, he didn't think first. No, it just came out.
Again, those are the things that people point to when they have these theories about what may have happened. Of course, again, we don't know. But here's the other thing. When they finally asked the parents, what do they think happened, or trying to get information from them, they started pointing to all kinds of other people as possibilities, and even their own friends. I mean, if these are your friends, why are you, and you think, oh, it's possible they could do this. Why are you taking your kids to their house?
I know. It felt like muddying the water is what it came across to me. Again, it felt like just muddying the water.
Patsy said the housekeeper who had been there for quite a while, she told the police, well, she was acting weird and I know she needed money. Like, wow,
Yeah.
you to throw your housekeeper under the bus.
Really? I think she asked her for money though. She asked her for $2,000 or something, right? So she points at her.
Yeah.
They started pointing at everybody, and that's a natural thing to do if you're
employees. The one I thought that was the worst. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them that they pointed to be honest. I mean, I found a whole list of one, but one I thought was the most sad was his friend Fleet White. That was the first one they asked to come over, the one that he took with him when he went to search the house. And then he was saying, oh, well, I don't even remember exactly why he said, but that guy had a lot of heat put on him for a while. Patsy also pointed to his wife as a possible suspect. So, and they were one of their closest friends.
What bothers me about that, what you're saying there as well, is that when she was on the phone, so they're showing that they have this suspicious way about them, that they're willing to throw the people around under the bus for the sake of trying to find out who their daughter's killer is, supposedly. But when she's on the phone, she's not giving any idea as to who could have possibly done this. Like, I mean, if she's capable of doing that, you think on the phone, she's like, what if it's Fleet? Maybe it's Fleet, or maybe it was this, or maybe it was that. You would be throwing ideas. I know if one of my sons went missing, I'd be knocking on every door in my entire neighborhood. And if someone looked at me funny, I'd barging my way in.
Right.
I'll deal with it later, right? But I'm going to make sure he's not eating pineapples with milk in the basement or something,
And this has been dramatized in like a movie of the week and stuff, but it actually happened. One of the things is when that whole morning when they're waiting for the kidnappers to call, John and Patsy are not in the same room ever. She's in another room with the neighbors or friends or whoever, just kind of sitting and I don't know, I can understand being distraught, but she's just sitting in there. He's ultimately, searching the house and doing other things and calling for his private jet or whatever. But he's doing these different things. When he's bringing JonBenet's body upstairs, Fleet White is going ahead of him and he's yelling out, call an ambulance, call a 911, call an ambulance.
Right. Yeah.
Patsy does not come. She's not move. Now, you've been waiting to hear where your daughter is all this time. And they're saying, call an ambulance. Even if you don't know exactly what's happening, once you go flying over there to see if they found her, she never gets up. So anyway, we know the charges of the outcome here. The grand jury convened in 1998, this is 2 years later, to hear testimony of John and Patsy Ramsey's involvement in her murder. So they finally convened a grand jury to hear this testimony. In 1999, the grand jury returned a true bill to charge the Ramseys with, quote, placing the child at risk, which led to her death, unquote, and obstruction of justice. But the Boulder County DA, Alex Hunter, decided not to prosecute the Ramseys, saying that the evidence was insufficient for prosecution. And this is what was strange about this, is the public did not learn of the grand jury's indictment of the Ramseys until 2013. They basically said, hey, you have enough here to go to court to charge these people with something. They didn't say murder. They said placing the child at risk, which led to her death. Now, you can interpret that a lot of different ways, and obstruction of justice, which is probably, staging whatever they did, or just obstructing, the detectives to investigate. But the DA just said, nope, I'm not going to prosecute. And nobody knew about that true bill was returned until 2000, many years later. The next DA in Boulder, her name was Mary Lacey. She took over the investigation in 2002. In 2003, she announced that, in her opinion, the murder of JonBenet was more consistent with an intruder theory. So again, just putting another nail in the case and saying, we're nothing to see here. In 2008, the Boulder DA's office stated the results of new DNA testing excluded the Ramsey family as suspects. Mary Lacey then publicly exonerated them and apologized publicly to them. I remember that, thinking, what the really?
Yeah.
That was something that people were just like, you're kidding me, right? That you're apologizing to them? In 2010, the case was reopened and new interviews were conducted, but no new evidence was uncovered in those interviews. In 2016, the Boulder chief of police came out saying that the case is still considered to be an active homicide case. So it's not solved. It's still active. It's not closed. Then the Boulder police chief and investigators I guess to this day, have disagreed with Mary Lacey's exoneration of the Ramseys. And the police chief was quoted as saying, quote, "To clear someone just on the premise of touch DNA, especially when you have a situation where the crime scene wasn't secure at the beginning, really is a stretch," unquote. I would think that she would just say, look, it's open. We don't know. We don't know. Until we get more information, we can't indict anybody. But to say, oh, we're exonerating them, that's a whole different thing.
For sure. It's gross. Everybody's got their heads in there. They're doing face palms over this whole situation. And then it just gets older, though. The case gets older and older. And then you come to a point. It's why it's important for podcasts like this, I think, is because it is important not to forget what happened here. Obviously, we don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But we can kind of assume. To me, it feels like these people have been influenced by a man who has a bunch of money in their neighborhood.
But here's the thing: this guy has a bunch of money. Did he put a ton of money into getting a private detective and trying to solve this?
I don't know.
I don't remember hearing anything about that. I mean, it's possible, but I don't remember hearing anything about it. Yeah, you would think that you have that kind of money. Your daughter is brutally murdered. You would, spend every last penny to try to find out who murdered her. So I hope you enjoyed our discussion of this case. It was a little different from what you usually get on Once Upon a Crime, as well as what you'll hear on Crime Machine. But Jack will also be covering the JonBenet Ramsey story in his own special way on Crime Machine. And trust me, it'll be something you probably never heard before because it'll be told in the Jack Luna style that I love. So tell them what's coming up there on Crime Machine, Jack.
Well, with Crime Machine, I'd like to say I don't fabricate anything on my podcast. It might sound like I do when I say what I'm about to say, but I pick a moment in crime. So with the Benet Ramsey case, I said it earlier, I'd probably go with how many people came over to the house and maybe follow John downstairs, how he immediately goes and finds his daughter's body. Something we didn't mention today was that she was placed underneath the Christmas tree at some point, which was a really powerful situation. I'm sure that will come up in my episode I do on Crime Machine. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about my podcast and come on here and share stuff with you. And I'm sure people will maybe enjoy it. This more from my previous podcast, Dark Topic, into Crime Machine. So I think some people, when they get hit in the face with Crime Machine, they're like, what is going on here? But basically, I'm kind of time traveling back to a moment in crime and really fleshing it out to look at it underneath a microscope. It's well produced.
The Dark Topic episodes, and you can also now get if you subscribe to Crime Machine, correct?
Yes, we push them all together. So when you search Crime Machine, you'll get that podcast, and then they'll be like archived what the previous podcast was, which was Dark Topic, about 35 or so episodes there.
What I can tell listeners is that, well, first of all, you want to subscribe because there's, like you said, over 30 episodes of Dark Topic and at least 3 now of Crime Machine on that feed. And I know you guys are going to be looking for something to listen to because, as you know, I'm going on a little bit of a break. I'll be gone this week and New Year's week. And I'm actually, for the very first time in now over 3.5 years of putting out a weekly episode on Once Upon a Crime, taking a little bit of an extended vacation, I guess you'd call it, a little break. It's really not a vacation. I'm still be working, but I'm not going to be putting out another episode until January 20th. That will give me a chance to do some additional research, things that I never have time to do, and to work on some other things ahead so that I can bank some episodes and also to be able to put more on Patreon. As you know, Jack, it's always hard to balance the time when you're trying to put things out on a consistent schedule with the podcast and then all these other side things that you have to get done as well. So that can be a little bit difficult. So rather than burning out and taking off 6 months, I decided to give myself a little bit of a break during the holidays. But I know, like I said, people are going to be looking for other things to listen to because they won't be having a new episode of Once Upon a Crime for a couple of weeks here. So I definitely recommend going and subscribing to Crime Machine. One of the things that I can say that I really like about what Jack does is I love the way he tells the story. And I've said this to other people, Jack, is that I am jealous of you in a good way because the way that you write things is so good. It's like it brings you into the story. It really brings you in. Where I feel like I'm telling the story from kind of more of a an analytical perspective in a way, although I'm still trying to give you guys, a little bit of a connection to it personally, but not as much as I think, like you said, going into it. So that's what I appreciate about Crime Machine, is because you're taking that one, like you said, moment in crime and really bringing us into that with you. And you do an amazing job. I just love that because, I'm a person that really appreciates somebody who can craft the story. And you really do that. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. So make sure to go now while you're listening to me right now and subscribe to Crime Machine. And like I said, you get all the Dark Topic episodes there as well. So I want to thank you again once more, Jack, for joining me today. That was really fun talking to you. And I hope we could do this again another time.
Me too. I had a lot of fun, Esther. I love your podcast. I love your personality. I feel like I got to say a whole bunch of nice things about you, but I've said them to you off the podcast. But you're great. I don't know how you do it, how you make everybody like you, but you're still actually likable in real life too. It's a real skill.
It's a skill. All right. Well, thanks a lot. Once again, I'd like to thank my guest, Jack Luna, for being on the show. Check out Crime Machine on your favorite podcast app to hear more true crime from Jack. I had so much fun talking to Jack that our recording of this episode went pretty long. So long, in fact, that I cut it down to a more manageable length. If you'd like to hear the entire uncut version of the episode, you can listen to that on Patreon. You get to hear some additional comments, side conversations, and even flubs in the Patreon episode. To become a Patreon member, go to patreon.com/onceuponacrime. Once Upon a Crime is now a Stitcher Premium podcast. If you're a Stitcher Premium member, you can get Once Upon a Crime episodes ad-free. If you're not a Stitcher Premium member but would like to join to get bonus content and ad-free shows from your favorite podcasts, including True Crime Garage, My Favorite Murder, and so many more, sign up at Stitcher.com, and if you use my discount code Once Upon a Crime, you'll get 1 month free. You'll get over 21,000 hours of premium podcasts, bonus episodes, and more for just $4.99 per month. But don't forget to use discount code Once Upon a Crime for your first month free. All new episodes of Once Upon a Crime can be heard ad-free on Stitcher Premium now, and most of our back catalog as well. We're in the process of adding the entire back catalog to Stitcher Premium right now. I wish you all a wonderful holiday season and a very happy new year. I'll be back with more episodes on January 20th, 2020. Hey, I didn't even plan that. Until then, be good to one another.